And if we were to compare that to an hourly rate for a 40-hour week in the US, that would be an hourly rate of $46.69, which ain't too bad. How's it going? It's Rock. Welcome to week number 14 of this content that I like to call my 5 to 9 after the 9 to 5. What we have here is a high-level summary for the week, and if you're new to my content, welcome. So essentially what we're seeing here is each candlestick represents a 1-hour chart. You can see a lot of my trades are on the chart itself, and basically I'm going to enable the lines that I have for my 5-minute candle just to show you the type of trades that I did for the week. So our first trade of the week here was a short with 12 contracts, and that was a net profit of $268.72. So our next trade here is essentially one complete trade. However, I'm going to refer to it as trade number 2 and trade number 3. But basically on the first one, we did short about 12 contracts. But I do this in the evening, and I protected myself on portions of it. And basically we were stopped out at a loss of $372.78. However, I was able to pretty much add more into the existing open contract, so we'll call that trade number 3. And basically we ended up on the latter end of it having a net profit of $595.60. Trade number 4 was a short. This one I did during my lunch break, and it was a net profit of $290.08. And then our next trade here was a long position. Now you can look at the timeline down there. It's about 11 o'clock at night. Long position with 18 contracts, net profit of $577.08. And happy to end the week back-to-back $500 trades on this trade number 6. It was a net profit of $509.22. For our trade analysis this week, I'll go through the last 2 trades that I did for the week, so trade number 5 and trade number 6, where we had a back-to-back net profit of at least $500. And this will be trade number 5, which is a net profit of $577.08. If you're new to my content, please check out the description below. I basically describe the rules that I set for myself when I enter a trade. Should you need a base to start on, I'm not charging you for it. It's completely free. But at the same time, I'm not telling you it's the right or wrong way to do things. It's just a base if you are looking for a strategy. But my main thing really is, develop your own system, and that will help you become a better trader. So for this trade here, it occurred around 11 o'clock at night. And basically you can see that crossover is usually when I start pay attention, which is around 10:30 p.m. However, I was not seeing that on the tick base side, so I waited until the crossover occurred on the tick base side. So you can see here it crossed over around 10:54. So at that point, if we look at both the MACDs for the time base and the tick base, they are showing bullish signs where they've crossed over, and the histogram is sort of showing some sort of divergence. And if I look at both the stochastic RSI, they were on the bullish side, or essentially it's overbought. And some people will say overbought means it's time to short, but for how I do the trading, I use that indicator as overbought as a sign for me to enter a trade. So entered 12 contracts initially, and then I went to bed, and before going to bed, I essentially was liking the signals I was seeing, so I put another trailing stop to add 6 more contracts to it should it ever go up. And then basically I protected it with an OCO on the end, where basically I would either hit the top or the trailing stop, which will protect me, either lock in some profits or minimize losses, or that reach goal I had on the top. So with this trade, it was a net profit of $577.08. And as you know, I call this my 5 to 9 because I really focus on trading during the Asian market and the European market. So things are a little slower, and I do that because I have a conflict during the daytime. And basically I want to show you back the hourly chart So this is the trade number 5 here. So I'm going to zoom in. And one of the reasons that I follow the hourly chart during the evening is because things are a lot slower. And you can see here, this is really one of the reasons I went bullish. It's more like a confirmation. You can see that it was heading towards the overbought side, which is showing the bullish signals. Now here is trade number 6, where we had a net profit of $509.22, and this is how we ended the week. Again, entered on this trade after 11 o'clock, and basically you can see that the crossover has already occurred before this, and we are above the zero line, and we are on the overbought side on the stochastic RSI. And essentially I sort of waited, and basically I wanted to see more divergence on the MACD on the tick base side, because we were below the zero line, so I was a bit hesitant on this. And basically, signs are there for stochastic RSI. So if you look at both the time base and the tick base, they're both on the overbought side. But with this trade, again, what convinced me is the hourly chart. So if we go back to the hourly chart here, this is trade number 6, and I was seeing a bit of a divergence on the MACD, and on the stochastic RSI I was seeing it trending a bit up. So I already used the 1 hour chart as a confirmation. It's very helpful when the market is slower. So during the Asian and European market, can't say I would recommend it during the US market, where it was so volatile and things are moving a lot quicker and more volume. But anyway, with this trade, I entered with a total of 12 contracts, and basically placed the OCO before going to bed, and essentially at about 1 a.m. that's when we were stopped out. Thankfully I was stopped out on the top of it, and that gave us a net profit of $509.22. So this is the account statement. So I pride myself in showing transparency in my content, and it's not a way for me to brag or anything like that. It's really more to show to you that what I'm doing is real. I'm not doing it for the YouTube views or anything of that nature. My main goal is to show this transparency, to see what a realistic view is of how to do the trading, because a lot of the personalities out there, sometimes they just show you the positive stuff, the positive gains and whatnot. But if you've been following me for a while, you know that weekly I show how I did, whether I was positive or negative. So we're recording this April 8th, Friday. It's about 1:44 in the afternoon. I did take the afternoon off. And the statement here I am showing from Sunday, April 3rd to today, Friday, April 8th. So if we look at it, I do want to point out this line item here, which was a withdrawal. So I withdrew $5,000 from the account. Ideally, I wouldn't want to be withdrawing because I want it to keep compounding and growing. But hey, I do this side hustle really to help me pay expenses, credit cards and whatnot, and reach financial independence where I can be debt free. Really, my goal is my only debt to be mortgage and everything else to be zeroed out. And I'm also using some of that money for quarterly taxes. Now if we scroll down a bit, no other deposits or withdrawals, but I did want to point out that I did have a mark to market here, which occurs when you have contracts that are open right when the US market closed, so around 1 or 1:15 p.m. Pacific time. So now we have the calculator back in here to essentially calculate how we did for the week, and our ending cash was $23,695.33, and we did withdraw $5,000 from the account, so we will add that cash back in there just to make the calculations more accurate. And our starting cash for the week was $26,827.41. So we'll subtract that from the total. And for the week, happy to say we have yet another positive week, so very thankful for this. So our net profit is $1,867.92. And if we were to compare that to an hourly rate for a 40-hour week in the US, that would be an hourly rate of $46.69, which ain't too bad. I mean, I'm sure you'd be happy with an hourly rate like that. I sure am. And what's great about this is my side hustle. So never compare yourself on the dollar value. To me, it's really more for your sanity, more important to look at it on a percentage wise. So our net profit of $1867.92. So our starting cash of essentially $26,827.41, and that gave us a net profit of, multiply that by 100, so the math looks easier, and that gave us 6.96% for the week. So quite happy with this 6.96% for the week because it aligns with my target, and my reach is 10% every week, so anything over that would be cherry. But quite happy really with hitting mid-range of between 2 to 7%, as long as I'm doing it consistently every week. Anyway, that's my content for the week. I'm glad I was able to do some trade analysis, and hopefully if you're new to the channel, you like what you saw and you enjoyed what you see. And for all those following my journey for a while, thank you for always giving me the support every week. If you didn't like what you saw this week, give me another chance, and hopefully on the next one you'll like what you see. All right, have a good one.